Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle, and I'm going to be repairing and overhauling a entry-level Daiwa Jupiter-z 4000 reel today. You may have seen this on my introduction video that I did on how to buy a used fishing reel, and we're going to go ahead and show you how to take this apart, do the basic maintenance on it, and do any repairs as necessary. As I mentioned on the other video, I did find this in a flea market, and it's quite a value for the price paid. So we're going to go ahead and disassemble a reel first. So you start with taking off the handle assembly. You can notice that in this case the handle assembly has a through screw, and the way you can tell that is if you turn the handle and the screw on this side is moving. That's a screw. If that does not move as you turn the handle, then the handle would be screwed into the main gear. So we're going to reverse the screw. And as you're noticing, I'm wearing latex gloves. I like to do that to keep any oils and lubricants off my hands during the rebuild process. You're never quite sure what has been used internally in these reels. And also, if you're using some cleaners, which we'll be doing later, it's not a bad idea to keep that off your hands as well. Okay, so the screw comes out, and as you notice, I put them in a parts tray. It's simply the bottom of a milk jug, but I put all my small parts in that tray so that I can get them during reassembly without worrying about where they fell. Next off would be the spool assembly. You do that by reversing the drag knob on the top. And this reel, as I mentioned, was found in a flea market. It was well priced. I got it for $10. I originally knew it was about a $35 reel. And had all the good bones behind it other than a lot of dirt. So next off, you want to take the side plate off to access the gears. Now there's two ways that these side plates are put in. In some cases the side plate goes through to the rotor. In some places you can notice that there'll be a line that'll run here that's actually a crack, and it'll allow you to remove that without removing the rotor assembly. In this case, the rotor assembly has to be removed. So you start that by taking off the little anti-reverse gear there, and then it's a nut, and it helps to have all of your wrenches out because the nuts vary on these reels. Okay, in this case I just found it, and in this reel it's a 12mm nut turned counterclockwise to remove it. And it's going to get rid of the rotor assembly. The nut comes off and goes in the parts tray. And you can remove the rotor assembly. And now you have access to that side plate. So the side plate comes off with 3 Phillips head screws that are attached to it. You can notice on top we have the bearing assembly, the pinion gear, the anti-reverse gear, the spring that holds it. We'll get to that in a moment. For now, we want to open up the side plate. And this is a 1-ball bearing reel, so you'll see bushings on the 2 main drive shafts. And what we're doing here is we're just taking it apart, checking it for any damage, and lubricating it. That's why we're going to the extremes here in terms of taking off the side plates and the rotors and the like. Because it's a flea market find, I don't know the history behind the reel, so I do want to make sure I check visually the characteristics of the reel. And because I intend to use this one, you want to leave it up for the season. So the 3 off, we'll open up the side plate. Nope, there's a 4th nut there. Let's get that one off. Same idea, Phillips head screwdrivers. These are graphite side cases on this reel. It's a lightweight reel. It's a 4000 reel series. 4000 reel is a good reel for lakes, inlets, light ocean, and so on. So you can tell the nature of the reel on the side is plastic. Actually, it's not even graphite. Here's your bushing on the one side of your main drive. And now you have to take the center shaft off in order to pull the main gear. In that case, that's held on by one Phillips head nut. Take that screw out. There's actually a through thread on the... Okay, and again, small parts, it's a good idea to have that little parts tray. Then you can remove the center shaft. And once you remove the center shaft, that enables you to pull out the main drive. So the only thing it seems it's could be good about this reel is that it just needs some lubrication. This is your shaft drive assembly, and I'm looking and it's pretty dry all around, so we're just going to go ahead and grease that. For greasing, I use a General Reel grease. It's a pen lubricant. There's others out there in the marketplace. Any of them works. Don't use Vaseline. I've found that in some reels. Although Vaseline is a petroleum jelly, what happens is it washes away quickly. This has a better adhering characteristic behind it. Don't use wheel bearing grease. It's too thick. It tends to jam up and hold dirt and grime. So I've just lubricated the bottom end of the pinion gear. I'm going to put a little lube on the shaft drive mechanism, and that sits on top of the little spud there. I'm going to put a little bit of lubrication, and you notice I say little. I find that when you work on reels, that the number one failure of a reel seems to be no lubrication. Number two failure seems to be too much lubrication. So a little bit on the back side and a little bit in the groove that carrier runs in. We reinstall that. Check while you have it apart. See if there's any excessive buildup on the back of the drive. In this case, there's not. Check to make sure that all of the teeth are clean. They are. And we're going to go back and put this right back together again then. So into the bushing on the back side, put a little lubrication on this side here. That is always accessible through the other side where the handle nut was. So if you ever want to lube that without taking the reel apart, you can go ahead and do that. Okay, once that's back in, we're reversing the process now. The drive shaft, the spool shaft goes in next, and as you can see, there's the hole for the screw, and that fits into this carrier assembly here. So we'll go ahead and I'm just going to drop this back in. Once you align it with the carrier assembly, you're ready to put that screw back in. I use a centering pin, a toothpick, a nail. Anything could probably work well if it hasn't been centered. In this case, I use that. And I'm going to take these gloves off. I'm pretty much done with the lube side of it. And some of the small parts, it's difficult to work. That's the downside of a latex glove. But I recommend that you use them, particularly during your cleaning phases. All right, so we're going to put that screw back in now. A bit of difficulty with that. Just can't seem to get it aligned. With or without gloves, sometimes these little parts are difficult. There we go. That took a while, didn't it? Okay, so that goes on there. And once that's tightened, we can go ahead and make sure that the bushing is back on and the side plate covers it. And then we can go put those side plate screws back on. We have the 4 side screws, and I'm noticing one is different in thickness. That's the one that I missed the first time. So the 3 thick ones go on the outside posts, and the one that's thinner in diameter goes on that bottom right hand corner. If you're working on repairing reels and you're not quite sure about where the pieces and parts go, or you don't do this frequently enough, then a good recommendation would be to use your cell phone camera or standalone camera and take pictures during the removal process. And take them frequently. Don't be ashamed. It doesn't cost you anything, so you might as well take them along the various steps as you take the pieces and parts out. That way you don't have any problem later on when you go to reassemble. If you find a piece or a part that you don't remember where, when, or what sequence it's in, it's always convenient to do that. Okay, on this side now we have the anti-reverse gear. It's not a instant anti-reverse. It uses an older system. I just removed that piece to check on the ball bearing, which is the 1 ball bearing in this reel. I'm going to go ahead and lube that. I use a Reel X, which is a formatted oil for reels, but you can use 3-in-1. You can use any kind of machine oil like this. You can use any other manufacturers. Here's a Abu Garcia reel oil. You can use any of those, and that's fine. And then I'm just going to replace the anti-reverse gear. Then replace the spool carrier assembly, replace the nut, and now that I know it's a 12mm nut, I don't have to search for my wrench bin. I just left the wrench off to the side, tighten that down, secure it, do a quick turn there to make sure it works fine, and boy, it sure does. Replace the handle side. The handle nut goes on the reverse side. And then the spool click mechanism. And then there's a little pressure washer that goes on top of that to hold that in place. The next step on the assembly, after you test to make sure it's running nice and smooth, would be the drag and spool assembly. And before I wrap this one up, since it is new, I don't know what the status of the drags are, so I'm going to go ahead and check those. The drags are held in by a little clip that runs inside the spool assembly. There's a groove there. That's your clip, again back into the parts bucket, and then if you tap, you can usually get the drags out. In this case, they look pretty good. There's one in the bottom there that didn't come out. So it's a 7 drag system. It's a 6 drag system. It's common in these types of reels. Just make sure it's clean in there. I'm going to just grab my paper towel and just wipe to make sure. Now, I noticed when I was just taking these out that these drags are well lubricated and they're flexible. It's exactly what it should be for a felt drag. But the 6 system will go felt, metal, felt, eared, felt, vinyl. And so long as they're lubricated, you don't need to do anything there. You could use a drag grease on this if you like. Some folks prefer something like a Cal's reel grease. Others simply use the reel grease that's the general purpose one, like the pen that we were using. So I'm going to put that last carry on, and then This can be done either way. You can either load the drags while the spool is on the reel. That saves the alignment issue with these keyed washers. Or you can do this off reel like we took it apart and then put it back on. So the keyed one goes first, then the eared one after the felt washer, and then the last one, which is also keyed. It's a rectangle. And then simply reinstall the clip to the spool, and you know you have serviceable drags that are ready for the season. If you needed a drag that if it was brittle, needed to be replaced, parts are available for this reel. So then the drag knob goes on top. I like to tighten it all the way down to start just to make sure that we're set and it's holding, which it is, and then I back it off. And a key on these reels is if you're going to store these over the winter time, or if you don't have them in constant use, back the drag off, because that'll take the pressure off the inside drags and won't push out the lubrications that you have, and it'll